Have you ever stepped into an old 1970s house and instantly thought, why did every home have furniture this bold? Or how did these strange colors become so popular? Before modern designs took over with clean lines and neutral tones, our homes were bursting with personality. Loud patterns, quirky decor, and warm, earthy textures that made every room feel alive. Today, we're diving back to yesterday to rediscover 30 things that nearly every 1970s household had. Nostalgic details that defined an entire generation. Get ready to step inside. If you grew up in a 1970s home, you can probably picture the living room sofa without even trying. Those bold, oversized floral patterns, or the sharp geometric prints that looked like they came straight off a retro wallpaper sample book. Every living room had one, big, heavy, and built to survive anything a family could throw at it. The cushions had this firm but bouncy feel, and when you sat down, you could almost hear the whoosh of the fabric stretching under you. The colors were unforgettable. Rusty orange, chocolate brown, mustard yellow, deep green. Shades that somehow worked perfectly together in the 70s, even if we might laugh at them today. And didn't it seem like those couches could swallow you whole during a long TV night? You'd lean back, grab a crocheted blanket, and suddenly you were lost in a sea of patterns. Right beneath that sofa was the second superstar of every 1970s home, shag carpet. And not just carpet, deep, lush, and sometimes so long your toes practically disappeared when you walked across it. There was something oddly comforting about it. That thick, fuzzy texture underfoot, the warm colors. Harvest gold, avocado green, burnt orange. Some homes even mixed 2 or 3 colors together so the carpet looked like a field of yarn. And, of course, the rake. Every family had that plastic shag rake that made you feel like you were gardening indoors instead of cleaning the floor. Keys, coins, toys, earrings. They all vanished in the shag like it was quicksand. Finding anything meant slowly combing through it like a detective. But that was part of the charm. Before flat screens, before remotes, before HDMI cables, the TV was a piece of furniture. A giant wooden cabinet that sat proudly on the floor, heavier than your refrigerator, and treated almost like a family member. You didn't turn on a 1970s TV, you activated it. A firm twist of the dial, a loud click thunk, and then the screen slowly glowed to life with that soft static hum. Kids today will never know the anticipation of waiting for the picture to warm up. Most families use the top of the TV as a display shelf. Framed photos, fake flowers, maybe a ceramic animal or two. And if it ever broke, you didn't toss it out. You stacked a smaller TV on top of the broken one and kept using both like it was perfectly normal. Do you remember having to stand up to change the channel? Or being the official remote for your parents? On the back of nearly every 1970s sofa, there was always one thing: a crocheted granny square blanket. Bright, loud, scratchy, and stitched with more love than fabric, these blankets were practically a member of the family. The colors never matched, and that was the charm. Deep reds, avocado greens, burnt oranges, sunshine yellows. It felt like someone took every leftover yarn in the house and turned it into art. And if you were lucky, you had a grandmother or aunt who crocheted one just for you. Those blankets were everywhere. On the couch, folded at the foot of the bed, tossed over a chair, and every time you wrapped yourself in one, you could feel the tiny bumps of the yarn and smell just a hint of fabric softener or cedar from the closet. Before Bluetooth speakers, playlists, or smart devices, the console stereo cabinet ruled the living room. This wasn't just a stereo, and it was an entire piece of furniture. A long, polished wooden cabinet with a turntable hidden under one lid, and a radio tuner glowing behind glass. Families gathered around these like they were sacred. You carefully lifted the lid, gently placed the needle on your favorite 45, and waited for that warm vinyl crackle. The console stereo set the soundtrack of the 1970s. Elvis, the Bee Gees, Fleetwood Mac, Donna Summer. Every party, every Saturday cleaning session, every night at home had a song playing from that cabinet. What album do you remember hearing most often on your family's stereo? If there was one decoration that absolutely defined the 1970s, it was the Macrame owl. You could walk into almost any American home and find one perched proudly on a stick, hanging on a wall like a guardian of the living room. With its big round eyes, knotted feathers, and long fringes that dangled toward the floor. For many families, someone in the house actually made it. Macrame swept across the decade like a crafting fever, and suddenly moms, aunts, and even teenagers were tying knots and weaving rope until the whole house looked like a bohemian art studio. The owl was the easiest design so naturally. Everyone made one. Some had wooden beads for eyes. Others had bright orange yarn or dark brown rope to match the paneling walls. Hanging it up felt like a small celebration of creativity. And let's be honest, even people who say they didn't like macrame still had at least one owl somewhere, usually in the hallway or next to the telephone table. Before minimalist decor and clean lines took over modern homes, the 1970s embraced shiny brass and lots of it. Brass animals were everywhere. Ducks flying across the wall, horses rearing up on shelves, owls with glowing amber glass eyes, even delicate brass flowers arranged in decorative bowls. It became part of childhood memories. Every family had at least one weekend where the kids got roped into polishing those figurines until they gleamed like gold. You'd sit on the carpet with a cloth, scrubbing away while the smell of metal polish filled the room. When you finished, the brass seemed to light up the whole shelf. These little pieces added warmth to 70s homes. They glowed softly under amber glass lamps, contrasted beautifully with dark wood furniture, and matched the earthy boho atmosphere of the decade. Even simple shapes like a dolphin, a bird, a leaf instantly felt classy, and they lasted forever. Many families still have a stray brass duck tucked in a box somewhere. In the 1970s, even if no one in your family smoked, you still had a freestanding ashtray. It was simply part of being a proper household. These ashtrays were practically works of art. Heavy brass bases, tall, slender stands, glass trays with ornate designs, and sometimes even a handle so you could carry it around the room like a fancy servant's tray. They made a distinctive sound too. That little clink when someone tapped a cigarette or dropped the ash. And almost everyone remembers the spinning ashtray lids that swallowed the ash with a satisfying whoomp when you pushed the button. Looking back, it's funny how normal they seemed. Guests would sit down, someone would slide the ashtray over, and no one thought twice. Even homes with children had them placed right next to the sofa or the TV console. Most were surprisingly beautiful. Amber glass, brass edges, etched patterns, mid-century shapes. They fit right in with the darker tones and warm lighting of the decade. Few things scream 1970s childhood like a beanbag chair. They came in vinyl, leatherette, corduroy, and every loud color imaginable. Kids loved them, parents tolerated them, and every living room seemed to have at least one buried in a corner like a giant, melting blob of furniture. Sitting on a beanbag was an adventure of its own. You didn't sit down as much as you sank in. The beads inside shifted and crunched, molding perfectly around your body until you found that sweet spot. The one where you could watch TV, play with toys, or flip through a magazine for hours. But the real memory? Trying to get back up. You'd roll, wiggle, push off the floor, and still flop back down like a fish out of water. Kids thought it was hilarious. Adults, not so much. They fit perfectly with the relaxed, bohemian feel of 1970s homes. And no matter how many times they leaked beads or lost their shape, nobody wanted to throw them away. What color was your family's beanbag? Bright orange, avocado green, or classic brown vinyl? If you walked into a 1970s dining room or kitchen, chances are the wall decor included something big, dark, and unmistakably retro: the giant wooden spoon and fork set. For reasons no one can fully explain, these oversized utensils became one of the most iconic and charmingly strange decorations of the decade. They usually came in carved dark wood, often with ornate patterns or curvy handles. Hung side by side like guardians of the kitchen, they added a rustic, old-world feeling to homes full of modern conveniences. And somehow, no matter what the wall color was, avocado, mustard yellow, burnt orange, that spoon and fork always matched. Families displayed them proudly, even though they were far too big to use and made absolutely no sense. But that was the magic of 1970s decor. It didn't have to make sense. It just had to feel warm, fun, and a little bit funky. Some families even had variations: wooden ladles, pizza paddles, or decorative cutting boards. It all depended on the vibe. There was something magical and a little bit stubborn about a rotary phone. Before buttons, before touchscreens, before speed dial, you had to earn every call. Your finger slipped into the dial, you spun the wheel, and you waited for it to click back. One number at a time. Kids today will never understand the patience it took to dial an entire 7-digit number. Those phones were tanks. Heavy enough to survive a fall, loud enough that the ring could shake the whole house. And every home had its favorite spot for the phone. A tiny wooden table in the hallway, a nook in the kitchen, or a desk next to the family calendar. Sometimes there was even a long, curly cord that stretched all the way across the room, giving you just enough privacy to whisper secrets, if you didn't get tangled in it first. The colors were classic 70s too. Avocado green, harvest gold, bright orange, or that creamy beige everyone remembers. If you grew up in the 70s, the word Tupperware probably brings back more than just memories of plastic containers. It brings back the party, the laughter, the gossip, the excitement when someone popped the lid to show how airtight it was. Tupperware parties were social events disguised as shopping trips, and nearly every mom in America attended at least one. The sets came in cheery, playful colors: pumpkin orange, lemon yellow, olive green, sky blue. Cabinets were filled with stacking bowls, measuring cups, tumblers, pitchers, and that iconic burping lid everyone loved demonstrating. And somehow, no matter how many pieces a family owned, they were always missing one matching lid. Tupperware wasn't just useful, and it represented community. Friends gathered around dining tables, sipping coffee and chatting while someone showed off the newest gadget. Before tile and hardwood took over modern kitchens, linoleum ruled the floor. And in the 1970s, it didn't just cover the room. It announced itself. Bold geometric patterns, fun diamond shapes, swirling mosaics, sunflower yellows, deep browns, and pumpkin oranges. Linoleum had a charm of its own. It felt cool under bare feet early in the morning, and slightly sticky on hot summer days when the sun hit just right. It was tough too, surviving spills, pets, toys, and years of chair scraping without giving up. Many families remember the morning sounds of linoleum: the clack of a dropped spoon, the drag of a wooden chair, the soft tapping of mom's heels as she cooked breakfast before school. Footsteps echoed differently on that floor. Cozy, familiar, unmistakably 1970s. Still with us on this nostalgic journey? Drop a yes in the comments so we know you're enjoying it. If there was ever a feature that instantly whispered 1970s home, it was wood paneling. The moment you walked into a room, those rich, warm boards wrapped around you like a cozy, familiar hug. Dark walnut, honey oak, or deep mahogany. Each shade brought its own kind of comfort, turning even the smallest living room or basement into a snug retreat from the outside world. There was something almost magical about the way sunlight hit those panels. On late afternoons, the wood glowed softly, casting long shadows that made the whole room feel calm and safe. Kids loved running their fingers along the grooves, tracing the little lines like secret paths. Adults loved how the paneling hid fingerprints, scuffs, and the chaos of everyday life. Decorations always looked better against paneling too. Family photos, brass figurines, holiday garlands, even handmade crafts from school. Everything just seemed to belong on a wood-paneled wall. And maybe that's why so many people remember it so fondly today. It wasn't just a style choice, it was the background of countless family memories, quiet evenings, and ordinary moments that became treasured with time. Before we rolled over and grabbed a smartphone, mornings in many homes started with something a lot more charming: the bedside alarm clock. And for some families, that clock could brew. The Teasmade or similar automatic tea and coffee makers felt like a tiny bit of science fiction sitting on the nightstand. You'd set the time the night before, pour in water, add tea or coffee, and drift off to sleep, knowing that just before the alarm rang, you'd hear the gentle bubbling of hot water and smell a fresh cup brewing right beside your bed. There was something incredibly cozy about waking up not just to sound, but to scent. That first whiff of strong tea or coffee drifting across the room, long before you ever made it to the kitchen. It wasn't in every single house, but if your family had one, it felt like a luxury straight out of the future. Nothing says the 1970s quite like a disco ball. You didn't have to live near a nightclub to see one. Plenty of families brought the dance floor home. All it took was a small mirror ball, a lamp pointed in the right direction, and suddenly the living room, basement, or rec room turned into a private disco. Kids would spin it slowly by hand, watching little squares of light dance across the ceiling, the walls, and anyone standing nearby. During birthday parties, sleepovers, or Saturday nights with the stereo cranked up, that mirror ball made the whole room feel electric. Sometimes it hung from the ceiling. Sometimes it sat on a shelf, waiting for its moment. But when the lights dimmed and the music started, Bee Gees, Donna Summer, KC, and the Sunshine Band, those reflections brought the magic. It didn't matter if the dance floor was shag carpet and the DJ was just the oldest sibling at the turntable. For a few minutes, your house was the club. Before you could tap a screen and play any song you wanted, music meant walking over to the record player and choosing carefully. In the 1970s, the turntable was the heart of the home's soundtrack. It sat proudly on top of a console stereo or its own stand, waiting for someone to pick an album and drop the needle. There was a ritual to it. Sliding the record out of its sleeve, feeling the smooth vinyl in your hands, gently placing it on the platter. Then came the soft crackle, that tiny magical static right before the music began. It made every song feel alive. Families had stacks of LPs and 45s, rock, soul, disco, gospel, country. Saturday cleaning, lazy Sunday afternoons, and parties all started with one question: what should we put on? Even the small details stick in the memory. The spinning label in the center, the arm lifting automatically at the end, the way everyone groaned if someone bumped the player and made the needle skip. Which record do you remember playing over and over again on your family's turntable? Long before sparkling water came in sleek cans, the coolest way to add fizz to a drink at home was the soda siphon. That chrome or colored glass bottle with its trigger on top looked like it belonged in a fancy bar, which made it feel incredibly sophisticated sitting on an ordinary kitchen counter or home bar cart. At parties, someone would proudly bring it out, twist in a fresh CO2 cartridge, and start topping off glasses. A quick squeeze of the handle, a sharp hiss, and suddenly your orange juice, whiskey, or flavored syrup turned into a bubbly treat. Kids loved watching it work almost as much as they loved sneaking a glass of plain fizzy water. The siphon added a bit of theater to entertaining. It wasn't just about the drink, it was about the show. The sound, the bubbles, the look of that bottle catching the light. Today, seeing one instantly calls back visions of 1970s dinner parties and home bars stocked with carefully arranged bottles and glassware. In the 1970s, if someone wheeled out a Hostess trolley, you knew they meant business. This wasn't just dinner, this was a dinner party. The Hostess trolley, with its heated compartments and shelves, let families keep dishes warm while they entertained like professionals. You'd see casseroles, roast meats, vegetables, and gravy all tucked neatly inside, staying hot while people chatted in the living room. When it was time to eat, the host would roll the trolley in with a little flourish, open the lids, and reveal the spread like a grand unveiling. For many households, owning a Hostess trolley felt like a status symbol. It said, "We're ready for company." It fit perfectly with the era's love of entertaining. Fondue nights, cocktail parties, and carefully planned menus. Even if it only came out on holidays or special occasions, its presence was unforgettable. The shiny metal, the warm steam, and the satisfying feeling of everything staying perfectly hot. Lighting in the 1970s didn't shy away from making a statement, and mushroom lamps were proof. With their rounded domes and curved bases, they looked like something from a retro sci-fi movie, especially when they came in bright orange, warm amber, rich brown, or glossy white. When you switched one on, the light didn't just brighten the room, it glowed. The dome gently diffused the light, creating a cozy pool of color on side tables, desks, and nightstands. In kids' rooms, they made bedtime feel less scary. In living rooms, they added the perfect warm accent against wood paneling and patterned wallpaper. Some were plastic, some glass, some metal, but they all shared that same playful, rounded shape that made them instantly recognizable. Even today, spotting a mushroom lamp in a vintage store feels like bumping into an old friend. Not every family had a hanging chair in the 1970s, but the ones who did weren't shy about it. Whether it was a wicker egg chair suspended from the ceiling or a rattan swing with a stand, a hanging chair made any room feel instantly cooler. You didn't sit in a hanging chair, you floated in it. It gently swayed back and forth as you read a book, listened to records, or just daydreamed. Kids treated it like a ride. Teens claimed it as the best seat in the house. And if it was near a window, it became the perfect spot to watch the world go by. These chairs fit right in with the decade's love for natural textures and relaxed, bohemian style. Paired with a throw pillow and a nearby plant, they turned a simple corner into a little escape. They weren't the most practical pieces of furniture, but that wasn't the point. They were fun, memorable, and very, very 70s. If the walls in a 1970s home were plain, it probably meant the decorating wasn't finished yet. Patterned wallpaper was everywhere. In hallways, bedrooms, dining rooms, even kitchens and bathrooms. Big florals, swirling vines, bold geometrics, faux brick, and wood patterns covered entire rooms from floor to ceiling. Some designs were so busy you almost felt dizzy if you stared too long. Others were surprisingly elegant, with subtle metallic accents that shimmered in the lamplight. But whether loud or quiet, those patterns gave homes a sense of personality that plain paint just couldn't match. Children remember tracing the shapes with their fingers or lying in bed at night, picking out favorite flowers or shapes in the wallpaper. Adults remember how long it took to hang and how stubborn it could be to remove years later. Even now, one glimpse of 70s wallpaper in an old photograph can instantly transport you back to that era of fearless decorating. Do you remember the wallpaper in your childhood home? And was it floral, geometric, or something wild? If you wanted to impress guests in the 1970s, you didn't just serve dinner, you brought out the fondue set. Nothing felt more sophisticated than gathering around a bubbling pot of melted cheese or chocolate, dipping bread, vegetables, or fruit with long, skinny forks and trying not to drop your food back into the pot. Fondue turned eating into an event. People lingered longer, talked more, laughed at the occasional mishap, and enjoyed the simple fun of sharing from the same dish. Sometimes it was savory, Swiss-style cheese with bread cubes and sausages. Other times it was sweet, warm chocolate with strawberries, bananas, and marshmallows. The fondue pot itself, often brightly colored or made of enamel or ceramic, became a centerpiece of the table. It showed up at holiday gatherings, New Year's Eve, or any night the host wanted to do something a little special. No 1970s dinner table felt complete without a set of brown drip pottery. These heavy, earthy dishes had a thick chocolate brown glaze that dripped into a creamy beige edge, almost like coffee spilling over the rim of a cup. Every family had a set, whether for everyday meals or for Sunday dinners. They were sturdy, warm, and comforting. A bowl of chili looked richer in those dishes. A slice of meatloaf felt more like a tradition when served on them. Even the mugs had a special feel. Thick handles, weighty bases, and that rustic glaze that made every cup of cocoa taste a little sweeter. These dishes matched everything in the 70s house. Wood paneling, amber lamps, floral tablecloths, and those unforgettable warm color palettes. And somehow, even when they got chipped, families kept them. They were part of the home. Walk into any 1970s kitchen in America and you'd see it instantly. That warm mustard gold glow coming from the fridge, the oven, the dishwasher, sometimes even the toaster. Harvest gold wasn't just a color, it was a statement. A soft, sunny, earthy tone that wrapped the entire kitchen in warmth. These appliances had a sturdy, almost industrial feel. Metal handles, heavy doors, surfaces you had to wipe with real elbow grease. And yet, there was something welcoming about them. Maybe it was because families spent so much time gathered in the kitchen. cooking, talking, laughing, or sneaking leftovers after school. Harvest gold paired beautifully with dark cabinetry, patterned curtains, wooden bread boxes, and the ever-famous linoleum floors. Even when the appliances aged and started making strange noises, families held onto them. They were built to last, and they did. One thing that made 1970s homes feel so alive was the sheer number of houseplants tucked into every bright corner of the house. It didn't matter if the room had wood paneling, bold wallpaper, or shag carpet. A leafy green plant could soften the whole space instantly. Families filled their homes with ferns, philodendrons, pothos vines, rubber plants, and spider plants that seemed to shoot out babies overnight. These plants became part of the daily routine. Someone always had the job of misting the leaves, turning the pots toward the sunlight, or trimming vines that stretched a little too far across the room. And if you grew up in the 70s, you probably remember that one plant that simply refused to die, no matter how much or how little care it got. The sight of a sunlit kitchen window lined with small clay pots, or a living room corner dominated by a towering fern, brought a sense of calm and warmth to the home. Even the air felt different, fresher, softer, like the plants were quietly doing their part to keep the house comfortable. Finally, no 1970s home felt complete without a wall, or at least a cluster, of family photos printed on Kodak film. Over time, the pictures shifted into that warm, orange-tinted glow that instantly gives them away as vintage. Those fading colors, the soft blur, the rounded corners, they're like time machines hanging right on the wall. Parents framed school portraits, wedding photos, vacation snapshots at national parks, and Christmas pictures with matching outfits. These frames often had ornate details or dark wooden borders that blended beautifully with paneling walls. Walking past that photo wall felt like passing through a gallery of family history. You'd stop, point at a picture, laugh at the hairstyles, and hear stories you'd heard 100 times, but never got tired of. Even today, if someone finds one of those old photos tucked away in a drawer, it hits differently. It's not just nostalgia, it's warmth, childhood, and family all wrapped together. 20 things the middle class spent money on in the 70s. The 1970s were a complicated decade for the American middle class. Inflation was rampant, averaging 7% throughout the decade and hitting double digits by the end. Yet, life for the middle class was a mix of post-war thriftiness and the rise of consumerism. Today, we're flipping through the old ledger, uncovering 20 items and experiences that shaped the lives of middle-class Americans, from practical household essentials to the pioneering technology of the era. Let's find out what made the American dream so different in the 70s. Buying a starter home. For the middle class in the 70s, buying a house was practically the default setting. Today, it's much harder, often requiring you to be rich or lucky. Back then, the American middle class, especially outside the coastal cities, often purchased modest 3-bedroom houses. Financially, the average household income increased significantly during the decade, moving from around $9,800 to nearly $18,000. The average home price also rose from $26,000 to about $59,000. What's remarkable is that many middle-class families could afford a home on a single income, often from a factory, civil service, or retail job. A working man could support a large family, travel, and even build his own house. Although mortgage rates were quite high at the time, around 9% in 1975, the high inflation helped tremendously. For instance, a medium-priced house in 1975 resulted in an initial monthly payment of about $1,000, adjusted for $2,017. However, the core difference was that the high inflation of the 70s constantly eroded the real value of that monthly payment. That $1,000 payment would quickly feel like $500 in buying power in just a few years, as wages also increased with inflation. This is a complete reversal from today, where low inflation means monthly payments hold nearly the same real value for the entire loan term. Additionally, young people in the 70s needed only half the down payment that young people today need. Buying that starter home was the biggest expense and the clearest symbol of the middle class in this decade. Some families even managed to build their own 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house for around $10,000 back in 1959 or 1960, something nearly impossible now. Once the biggest investment, the house, was secured, families needed reliable transportation. Gasoline/fuel costs and the crisis. The 70s are infamous for the energy crisis. This event, starting with the 1973 oil crisis and escalating after the 1979 Iranian Revolution, profoundly impacted middle-class spending. Before the crisis in 1973, a gallon of gas along U.S. Route 61 cost just 25 cents. Filling up a Volkswagen Bug might cost only $2.50. But prices changed drastically. Less than a year after the OAPEC oil embargo, in response to U.S. support for Israel in the 1973 Yom Kippur War, the price jumped. Between 1973 and 1980, gas prices more than tripled, soaring from 36 cents to over $1.25 a gallon. By 1979, the price was 72 cents a gallon, and 2 years later, after the Iranian Revolution, it jumped to $1.42 a gallon. These costs, while seemingly small by today's standards, truly hurt household finances. Consumers faced hours-long lines at the pumps, ironically wasting gas idling while inching forward. This shortage pushed prices higher, leading to the term stagflation, a combination of stagnant growth and price inflation. The energy crisis forced the American middle class to change consumer habits. It drove initial efforts toward energy-saving technologies, particularly fossil fuel efficiency. The fuel expense, although smaller than other major costs, was volatile and uncertain, causing significant shocks to the budgets of middle-class families who couldn't work from home and had to drive to their jobs. After covering external essentials, let's look at the small but fixed costs that maintained daily life and education within the homes. If you were middle class in the 70s, you absolutely had a recliner. It wasn't just furniture, it was a symbol of family status, often called Dad's chair. This large chair had a characteristic clunk sound when it reclined. It was often upholstered in popular materials like naugahyde or corduroy. It was expensive, not loose change, but worth it to the buyers. This chair was ritualistic. No one else was allowed to sit in that chair when Dad was watching the evening news or following a game. Culturally, the recliner represented middle-class stability and security, and was a physical expression of relaxation and domestic power. It was the spot where the father, often the family's sole earner, could rest after a long day's work. Purchases of large furniture like this, along with other major appliances, were carefully planned and expected to last for years, reflecting the middle class's thriftiness and long-term investment mindset. Major household goods like stoves, refrigerators, washers, dryers, and sewing machines were common purchases recorded in consumer expenditure surveys of the time. The recliner, along with the TV, made the living room or family room the household's main entertainment center in the 70s, solidifying the focus on family-centered entertainment. It was an essential luxury worth the cost. What color was your dad's recliner? Did you dare sit in that chair when he wasn't home? Share your memories of this iconic piece of furniture in the comments. Color TV. By the 1970s, owning a TV was standard, but the color TV was the middle-class goal. While black and white sets still existed, often relegated to the basement or bedrooms, color TV became the standard. This decade saw the massive proliferation of color TV. By 1972, about 50% of U.S. households owned one. By 1980, that number grew to about 80%. Reliable brands like RCA, Zenith, and Magnavox were favorites. The TV was usually housed in a wooden console, serving as a piece of furniture that families literally had to make space for. Color TV turned evening viewing into a shared ritual. The family gathered to watch favorites like The Brady Bunch, MASH, or The Price is Right. This was central home entertainment, and the crucial rule was, no one was allowed to touch the dial without permission. Switching to color TV was a significant expense, but it was a practical upgrade rather than a mere status symbol. It provided a better entertainment experience, strengthening family values by keeping everyone home together. The rise of color TV also paved the way for other home entertainment technologies, like the later Pong console. TV, along with other major appliances, was recorded in the 1972 to 1973 Consumer Expenditure Survey, indicating these were big assets the middle class spent money on. Watching TV was visual entertainment. But what about the audio experience? Formal china sets. Every middle-class home in the 70s had the good dishes. This was a major, careful social expense, often received as wedding gifts or bought via layaway. They were carefully stored behind glass cabinets, only brought out for special occasions. Christmas, Thanksgiving, or when mom wanted to prove the family was settled. This formal china was not bought casually. A full set could cost hundreds of dollars, a significant expense the middle class had to budget for. Owning it symbolized accomplishment, the continuation of traditional values, and the ability to host formal gatherings. Crucially, you didn't eat dinner on them every day. They were display items, an investment in social image and family value. Similarly, other housewares like glassware, linens, towels, and small kitchen appliances were bought on layaway or received as gifts. They represented durable goods that the middle class spent money on to improve their quality of life at home. This spending reflected a priority on material assets that defined a traditional family. Consumer expenditure reports from 1972 to 1973 detailed items like household furniture, small appliances, and china as part of quarterly surveys. These items were markers of a middle-class household accumulating assets and achieving post-war stability. If the good dishes were for special occasions, one item was used almost every night: the TV. Home. Newspaper and magazine subscriptions. Before the internet and handheld devices, the middle class got their news via paper. A daily newspaper subscription was a small, regular, but necessary household expense. Papers were printed, folded neatly, and often delivered right to your door, usually by a 12-year-old on a Schwinn bike before school. Most middle-class families subscribed to at least one daily paper and a Sunday edition. Major papers provided national and local news. Beyond the paper, families spent money on popular magazines. The TV Guide was essential for checking schedules on the new color TV, more on that later. Others included Reader's Digest and National Geographic, offering entertainment and education. These magazines helped shape the worldview of a generation that didn't have easy, instant access to information. This is an example of consumer behavior that differs sharply from today. Now, middle-class families allocate a substantial portion of their income to tech services like the internet, smartphones, and streaming services. Conversely, in the 70s, spending on technology-related products and services was minimal. These small monthly costs for newspaper and magazine subscriptions served as the primary information, education, and entertainment expense for the family. Recliner chair. One car per family. Unlike today's car-centric parent culture, where everyone old enough has a vehicle, in the 70s, most middle-class households only had one car and made it work. Having a second car was a luxury, not a given. These cars served every need: groceries, long-distance travel, and transporting children. Kids usually walked, rode bikes, or took the bus to school. The school drop-off culture barely existed. When a new family car was needed, it was a major purchase. For example, a new family car like a 1973 Chevrolet Impala cost about $3,200. This was a significant portion of the family's annual income, which ranged between $10,000 and $18,000 during that decade. The purchase was not just the initial cost, but also maintenance and operating costs. The father, often the primary worker, might do his own repairs, keeping maintenance costs low. Many families drove older cars, sometimes bought cheaply at police auctions for about $100. The family vehicle was often a station wagon. It was packed full of gear, serving as the car for summer road trips. The middle class spent carefully on their single vehicle, viewing it as an essential tool, not a status symbol. They had to make one car work because it was the most economical way to manage the family budget, especially considering fuel costs. That single car needed gas, which brings us to one of the most volatile expenses of the decade. The Atari 2600 launched in 1977, marking the beginning of the joystick era. It was the first game console of its kind to offer interchangeable game cartridges, allowing users to play many different games, a huge step up from Pong. The success of the Atari 2600 was cemented by its launch with 9 games, including Air Sea Battle, Basic Math, Blackjack, Combat, Indy 500, Starship, Street Racer, Surround, and Video Olympics. The success of the Atari 2600 was driven by its game library and its simple yet revolutionary joystick controller. HP 65 Programmable Calculator. The Hewlett-Packard 65, HP 65, is an example of advanced technology far ahead of its time in the 70s. It was the first magnetic card-programmable handheld calculator, introduced in 1974 and costing nearly $800. This scientific calculator made solving complex math problems easy and fast. The HP 65 featured a magnetic card reader for storing programs, allowing users to write their own calculations or use pre-programmed cards, offering precision and convenience. Even more incredibly, this handheld device was even used by NASA astronauts in space to adjust their spacecraft's position, solidifying its status as a technological legend. Maytel Electronic Football. This device used a series of lights on a small screen to simulate the game. Players controlled a blinking light representing a football player, navigating past opponent lights to score touchdowns. Despite limited gameplay options, Mattel Electronic Football was a huge success, as it was one of the first popular handheld electronic games. It paved the way for the future of mobile electronic games and tablets we see today. The electronic beeps and the blinking red lights on the black screen became the characteristic sounds and visuals of mobile entertainment. Mushroom decor. In the 1970s, interior design and kitchenware, illustrated designs, especially fruits and vegetables, were popular, but none were as popular as mushrooms. Mushrooms were one of the most common types, appearing on everything until the end of the decade. Mushroom designs, often drawn or sometimes embossed, could be found on cookware, canister sets, kitchen towels, trivets, and even wall clocks. For some people, the mushroom trend was such a craze that entire kitchens were decorated with mushrooms during this decade. Natural elements were brought into home decor, aligning with the natural theme and earth tones that conveyed the era's rustic simplicity. Indoor live plants. The first Earth Day event held in 1970 strongly inspired people to bring nature indoors. Plants like paus, common houseplants, spider plants, and ferns would hang down from stands, complementing the natural wood finishes of the kitchen. They were often placed on specially designed plant stands that could hold multiple plants and sometimes reach the ceiling. These easy-to-care-for species not only added a patch of green to the earth-toned rooms, but also brought a fresh, lively feeling, creating a cozy and environmentally conscious space. You could apply this simple and effective way to make your house fashionable and nature-friendly. Elaborate standing ashtrays. Elaborate standing ashtrays were a common fixture in many homes, especially the living room. The importance of having a convenient and beautiful place to put out cigarette butts was not overlooked, as smoking was a much more common habit than it is today. These ashtrays were often made of decorative glass and accented with brass, creating an attractive focal point. They were usually very large, so you didn't have to empty them often, which added convenience. Moreover, they often had handles, allowing you to lift and move them around the room easily. Granny Square Crocheted Blankets. Besides keeping warm, these blankets were symbols of home craftsmanship, a crucial life skill passed down from mothers and reinforced in high school home economics classes. If you grew up in the 1970s, you definitely saw or owned these crocheted blankets. For many families, these rough blankets were not just used to decorate the back of the sofa, but were also the result of a popular hobby at the time, crocheting. Consequently, many families had many of these blankets in every room. They were often made of rough yarn and used bright, contrasting colors, adding a splash of vibrancy to the earth-toned living room. Do you still keep any unique collectibles from your childhood? Which memorabilia holds the greatest sentimental value for you? Color TV in the bedroom. Owning a color TV in the bedroom was a clear sign of status. Black and white TVs were still very common, and color TVs were only gradually making their way into family living rooms across the country. But having a color TV in a personal bedroom was a major status symbol. You could watch your favorite shows in full color from the comfort of your bed, which was incredible at the time. These TVs were often very large and encased in wood, placed on the floor and could double as a table. Some wealthy families even had TVs that came with the so-called Zenith Space Command wireless remote control, allowing them to change channels without having to get up. In-ground swimming pool. An in-ground swimming pool was a sign of success, indicating that your family had enough space and finances to maintain such a luxury amenity. Wealthy families with two-story houses and spacious backyards often had these pools, turning their home into a private oasis for summer fun. Owning an in-ground pool meant you always had a radiant tan and could host the most exclusive pool parties for all your friends. The sound of splashing water and music playing from a portable radio were integral parts of the luxurious life. Schoolhouse Rock shorts. Saturday was sacred for cartoons, but the Schoolhouse Rock shorts cleverly integrated education into entertainment without us even realizing it. These segments taught us about multiplication, like 3 is a magic number, history, like how a bill becomes a law, and the difference between conjunctions and interjections. Thanks to the catchy and memorable songs, children knew all about complex concepts without having to open a book. Schoolhouse Rock turned Saturday mornings into a secret study session where we giggled and sang along. Even now, many of us still remember the lyrics to Conjunction Junction or I'm Just a Bill. Polyester. Although there were many different clothing options in the 1970s, many of us still chose polyester. This synthetic material made owning a leisure suit or safari jacket easy and affordable for many disco fans. We owned them in every color and pattern. The casual polyester leisure suit style became even more popular after John Travolta wore them on the big screen in Saturday Night Fever. Polyester was known for being heavy, hot, slippery, and shiny. Although this material could be uncomfortable and caused heavy sweating, it was still the top choice for anyone wanting to look cool, because it offered glossiness and fit the disco style. Hot pants. The peak of bold and rebellious fashion in the 1970s must be hot pants. These were short, tight shorts that only covered the most necessary parts, showing off long legs, making a strong statement wherever they were worn. This fashion trend was a way for women to liberate their bodies and express freedom, showing skin. They were controversial and attracted so much attention that they earned the name hot pants. Despite social scrutiny, hot pants were widely accepted and became a symbol of confidence and disco style, suitable for brightly lit dance floors. Halter tops and hip huggers. Halter tops and hip huggers also took center stage in women's fashion, embodying the freedom and rebellion of the youth. These outfits exposed the midriff and highlighted curvy hips, perfect for the dance floor, especially when they danced the newly popular moves like the bump, the hustle, and YMCA. Hip huggers, often paired with large belts, along with shoulder-bearing halter tops, were the perfect outfit for showing off sweaty dance moves. The decade's culture made dancing essential, and many girls practiced their steps as if they were about to become the next. Buying clothes on layaway. In the 70s, buying clothes often meant using layaway. Layaway was especially popular for middle-class families seeking to balance their budget while still getting seasonal clothing. The system worked like this. You chose essential items, school clothes for children, winter coats, church shoes, and then paid for them in small installments until the full value was paid off. Layaway was particularly popular at major general stores like JCPenney and Montgomery Ward. This installment plan allowed middle-class families to stretch their paychecks. Purchases of consumer goods, particularly clothing and other items listed in the 1972 to 1973 Consumer Expenditure Survey, were carefully managed. Clothing purchases were often detailed by type: shirts, dresses, pants, shoes, and the age/gender of the family member. Spending on clothes reflected post-war thriftiness. Instead of relying on credit cards and debt like today, layaway was a financial mechanism that allowed families to save for the item, while ensuring their children had the appropriate wardrobe for the school year or winter. This also applied to large household items or formal china. Avon Cosmetics. In middle-class neighborhoods of the 70s, the doorbell frequently rang with the arrival of the Avon lady. Avon represented small but regular expenditures on cosmetics and personal items. Avon became a cultural icon. It offered practical, affordable makeup, and most importantly, it was delivered straight to your living room. The convenience of shopping at home via catalog and from a familiar neighbor was a preferred business model. In addition to cosmetics, other personal care expenses were part of daily spending. In the 1972 to 1973 Consumer Expenditure Survey, spending on personal supplies, personal care services, and prescription drugs were carefully recorded. However, it was the Avon lady who provided the social element and personal connection. The Avon ladies were often better tapped into neighborhood gossip than anyone else. While modern technology spending has replaced many personal and shopping activities, e.g. online shopping, buying Avon cosmetics through an in-person salesperson reflects a priority on community interaction and traditional values in the middle-class neighborhoods of the time. This was a type of expenditure that maintained personal and social lifestyle without requiring a trip to the mall. 50 things that bring back the best 1970s memories. Can you smell the hot polyester or feel your feet sinking deep into the shag carpet? The 70s were the era of feathered hair, hot pants, and banana seat bicycles. This was when a $275 Pulsar watch was the ultimate symbol, and the Atari game console was new. Let's unlock the bold and unique memories that shaped an American generation. Let's start now. Short shorts and tube socks. When thinking about 1970s fashion, few probably want to mention the trend of short shorts for men. These extremely short, tight shorts were primarily seen in athletic shorts, often appearing on the basketball court or on roller skaters cruising in the park. The distinctive feature was that these shorts were often paired with tube socks. These socks covered the lower half of the leg, usually featured stripes around the top, and created a casual, sporty look. Famous athletes like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bjorn Borg helped popularize the short shorts and tube socks trend nationwide. It was a very distinct style compared to modern men's fashion, showing off hairy legs, and thankfully this trend has gradually faded over time. Super 8 cameras. Before convenient digital cameras or smartphones, families in the 1970s often recorded important life events using the Super 8 camera. This camera was a brilliant invention by Kodak, utilizing a cinematic film format, but designed to make home movie recording easier and more affordable than ever. It allowed any family to become amateur filmmakers, recording birthday parties, summer vacations, or warm Christmas events. Reviewing those old Super 8 films with faded colors and characteristic film grain truly brings a deep sense of nostalgia for a simpler era. Answering machines. At this time, home communication took a big leap, bringing a new sense of control thanks to the introduction of the answering machine. Previously, if you didn't pick up the phone in time, you missed the call. But now, the caller could leave a message, allowing us to listen back when we were free. Owning an answering machine gave people more control over their lives. It added a touch of new technology to every home, making the house more modern and convenient. Mothers no longer had to stay by the phone, and teenagers could leave messages for friends without bothering their parents. Wacky Packs. Wacky Packs was the only place where kids could openly ridicule major brands without getting into trouble. These card sets humorously and sometimes crudely parodied popular consumer products of the time. The artwork on the cards was drawn by some of the decade's most famous artists, bringing a unique sophistication to the silly humor. The card packs were a fun collectible item. Inside each pack was a stick of hard gum with a checklist and 2 wacky stickers. They were very popular for sticking on school notebooks due to their eye-catching images and humor. Large belt buckles. The popularity of belt buckles increased sharply in the 70s, and manufacturers quickly seized the trend, creating new designs and art on these oversized metal pieces. They were widely sold through mail-order magazine advertisements at concerts and festivals, and by small street vendors. Your belt buckle said a lot about you, from your favorite band and the car you drove, to the personal style you wanted to express. They were often made of brass or other heavy metals. Having a collection of large belt buckles demonstrated individuality and was an essential part of the high-waisted Levi's jeans or bell-bottoms outfit of the time. Rattan wicker furniture. Rattan and wicker furniture, previously reserved only for patios and porches, made a huge shift and became a hot addition to internal living spaces and kitchens. Dining chairs and breakfast bar stools began to be replaced by more natural and casual rattan or wicker options. This natural furniture, or even decorative baskets, added a layer of warm, rustic texture to 1970s kitchens. It combined perfectly with macrame owl wall decorations and the popular earth tones like avocado green and harvest gold. Rattan furniture brought a comfortable, close-to-nature feeling, softening the prominence of bold wallpaper patterns. Pulsar watch? Pulsar became the first watch inspired by and displaying time in a digital format using LEDs. Owning a Pulsar demonstrated that you were tech-savvy and had a modern aesthetic. It debuted on The Tonight Show in 1970. This high-end watch cost $275, equivalent to over $1,800 today, adjusted for inflation, making it a clear status symbol. Pulsar's sleek, futuristic design and advanced technology turned it into the first fully electronic watch with no moving parts. Pulsar's popularity led Texas Instruments to produce their own digital watch in 1975, but at a much more affordable price, bringing the product to the masses. Magnavox Odyssey. If you are a video game fan, the Magnavox Odyssey is where it all began. Launched in 1972 after 5 years of development, it was the first commercial home video game console. This groundbreaking system was extremely rudimentary, capable of displaying a maximum of 3 dots and 1 vertical line, but it allowed for playing over 20 unique games. The Odyssey included many unusual accessories such as rectangular controllers, plastic overlays for the TV screen to simulate different settings, and cards for various game scenarios. Although quite primitive by modern standards, the Odyssey's innovation was a critical milestone in the development of video games, directly influencing future consoles, especially Atari, which launched a version inspired by Odyssey's tennis game. Pong. Pong's simplicity worked wonders. Featuring 2 paddles hitting a small square back and forth, Pong was cutting-edge technology in the mid-70s. It marked the dawn of home video gaming. Introduced by Atari in the Christmas season of 1975 and sold through the Sears catalog, the Pong console quickly became a craze. Although it only played a single table tennis simulation, its simplicity and competitive gameplay captivated audiences. Hours of entertainment were spent trying to defeat opponents, often siblings or neighbors. Pong's success led to knockoffs and laid the foundation for future innovations in gaming. If you didn't own one, you definitely knew someone who did, and found every way to befriend them to play. Atari 2600. Vinyl records. The 1970s were the peak of the vinyl LP. Buying records was a regular and important expense for the middle class, from teenagers to fathers relaxing in their recliners. The record market boomed, with hundreds of millions of albums sold annually. By the end of the decade, over 300 million LPs were being sold yearly. This was the golden age of music, featuring legendary artists like Fleetwood Mac, Led Zeppelin, Stevie Wonder, Pink Floyd, and the Bee Gees. Buying a new album was a major event and a way for people to stay current culturally. Music spending wasn't limited to vinyl. Middle-class families also spent money on quality stereo systems and audio equipment to play these records. Owning a great stereo and a robust record collection was a sign of financial stability and a well-rounded recreational life. As technology advanced, personalized audio began to emerge. Late in the decade, Sony introduced the Walkman in 1979. Priced around $150, the Walkman revolutionized personal audio by allowing people to listen to music on the go. While the Walkman symbolized the shift from family audio, vinyl, to personal audio, cassette, vinyl remained the decade's dominant format. If music was home entertainment, going out on a Friday night meant going to the movies. Movie tickets. In the 70s, going to the movies was a traditional Friday night entertainment for the middle class. Today, going to the theater might be seen as expensive or inconvenient, but back then, it was an unmissable community and cultural experience. The cost of seeing a film was very affordable, allowing the entire family to participate. A movie ticket was only about $2. For For that price, you could take the whole family, buy popcorn, and still have change left over for soda. This shows that external entertainment was not a luxury expenditure but a regular part of the budget. The 70s are considered the golden age of cinema, launching iconic films like Jaws, Star Wars, The Godfather, Grease, and Rocky. These films were not just entertainment, they were huge cultural events that defined the spirit of the decade. Going to the movies contrasts with the habit of eating out. While middle-class families went to the movies regularly, they rarely ate out. Stopping at a grocery store on a road trip or preparing sandwiches at home was common. Eating at a restaurant was considered a special event, a treat, not a daily habit as it is today. Thus, spending $2 on a movie ticket provided much greater entertainment value than frequent dining out. Enjoying this trip down memory lane? Don't forget to hit the hype button. It's the best way to help our channel grow. Thank you. Do you still have any orange-tinted photos from the 70s? And who's in the picture? Thanks for traveling back to yesterday with us. If these memories brought a smile to your face, let us know which 1970s item you remember most. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can keep exploring the past together. See you in the next nostalgic journey.